Hey, what up guys, John from Mongo Fishing. Today I'm going to do a how-to on rigging tube baits. So this bait right here in my hand is just a 4-inch tube. Any special name? Lunker Hunt Revealer tube, crawfish color, 4-inch. Any brand tube will work, but for this little demonstration, I'm going to use these. I'm going to show you several different ways to rig them, kind of maybe discuss a little bit of the options or benefits to it. But I guess before we get into that, the reason for tubes are highly effective baits. They're great. One of my first bass I ever caught, actually tubes were the first lure I ever learned to skip, for skipping underneath docks and stuff like that way back in the day when I was a kid. But I used to fish these things all the time. The first tubes I ever fished were called Gitsits. I don't even know if Gitsits are still on the market or not, but you know, tube baits have been around for a minute. They're great crawfish imitators, they're great bait fish imitators, they're just great food imitators, right? And so they're great baits. You know, all the bass species will chomp on them. They're just really good baits to use, and they're super easy to rig, and they're super easy to use. So they're just good baits to have in your box. So let's get into it. Probably the easiest way to rig. Let's stop. That's how I keep my jig heads. I bag them by size. So these are 4/0. But the easiest way to rig them is just with a basic jig head. These are tube jig heads, and getting them in the tube. Tubes are hollow, most of them, not all brands, but they're hollow. So getting it in the tube can be difficult sometimes. You want to get it wet. This thing's lead, so don't stick it in your mouth to get it wet. It's easier if you just, you know, like spit on your fingers or whatever and rub it on there. But, you know, don't stick lead in your mouth intentionally. So you just slided it up inside the bait. You can see the hook point right there as I'm pushing forward. Or not the hook point, the eye. And so you get it where you want it. And then you just apply some pressure, and bam, there you go. Rigged. Super simple, right? Now, you wouldn't want to use this in heavy cover. You wouldn't want to use it. This is great for like skipping underneath docks and stuff like that, but don't toss this near timber. You're gonna get stuck, right? You're gonna get snagged. So this is just great just for tying on and throwing out there. Don't use a heavy jig head. I think this is a 1/4 ounce. I try to stay at 1/4 ounce or smaller. Occasionally I'll go to 3/8, but I don't think I've ever used anything heavier than that. I think if you're going heavier than that, you lose some of the action. When this thing's sinking, it's kind of spiraling, right? And if you go too heavy, it's just going to go straight down. You want it to spin as it falls. That's part of the action of a tube. So yeah, you tie it on and you cast it out, let it sink to the bottom. You're going to pop it, let it sink to the bottom. That's it. Super simple. Jig head, done. So, say you don't have any jig heads. You can Texas rig it. Now for Texas rigging, there's a few different styles. You can use an EWG if you want, an extra wide gap hook, or you can use actual tube hooks. These hooks are designed for tube baits. They are definitely the way, you know, if you can afford to buy them, pick some of these up if you want to fish tubes. It's the easiest way to Texas rig them. And like I said, they're designed for tube baits. So they look like that. That's their keeper right there. Okay, it's kind of a weird shaped hook. So we'll Texas rig with this first before I show you how to Texas rig with regular EWGs. So with this, what you're doing is you're coming in the nose. Instead of straight like that, you're coming at an angle. Okay, you want to come, let's see, how's this worm sitting? Okay, so So you want to go straight in the nose and pop like straight out. Okay? You run this up all the way past the keeper. There's the little keepers. See them? There's your eyelet. Turn it. And then you Texpose it just like you would any other soft plastic. And there you go. Okay? Super simple. That keeper is holding it in place so it doesn't ball up. And balling up is when it goes down the hook. So there you go. That is Texas rigged with a tube hook. But let me show you the difference in some EWGs and why I choose the ones I choose. This is a Gamakatsu 4-aught. Okay, this is a VMC 4-aught. Now look at how sharp this angle is right here, right? How it's coming down and has to go back up and then start down the shank. Pretty steep versus this one where it's not nearly as steep. Look how sharp this angle is. Look how rounded this is. Okay, huge difference in those if you look at them side by side. Now I want this style for my EWGs if I'm using tube hooks, or if I'm using tube baits. You know, so if I'm fishing plastic worm and I feel like I may be switching to a tube bait, I'll put on one of these VMCs. If I feel I may be doing a soft plastic swim bait, then I'll probably go to this Gamakatsu hook instead. So let's rig this up. We're going to do this with a bobber stop. Okay, bobber stop on. 1/4 ounce. It's one thing I love about these Wu tungstens is, and I got this thing in here good, is I've got the green ones, so it's going to match perfect or pretty close to perfect with this swim bait or tube bait, sorry. Okay, so bobber stop, our 1/4 ounce bullet weight. Make some room here. I'm gonna throw a bead on here, right? I just grabbed a random plastic clear bead. Again, this is just for demonstration purposes. Okay, bead, and now we're gonna put on our EWG. Tied on with an improved clinch knot. Tied on with whatever knot you want. Okay, cut off our tag end. Alright, now take our tube bait. Now, you saw these two hooks look nothing alike. The tube hook, it's straight shank, this EWG with the steep bend. So the way tube baits are designed is they'll ball up normally if you put them on the normal way that you would put on a worm. If we just run it like that, slip it down here, where's that? See, it's already starting to slide on me. So if you rig them like this, they're going to want to ball up. This is going to slip past up here, no problem, and then ball up on you. So on this style hook, what I like to do, again, the preferred way to do it is with the proper hook being a tube hook. But what I like to do with this style hook is rig it backwards. Okay? Instead of going through the nose and coming out the side, I like to go in the side and come out the nose. So it's like this. Okay? and then I run it up the hook. See, it's totally facing backwards. We're going to turn it around when we go past the bend. Okay, so we turned it around. And now we're going to rig it the way we'd normally rig it with Texas style, with the bending and make sure it's popping out in the right spot and all that fun stuff. So this sits so much better because what it's doing is it's pinching right there on that bend. Okay? It has a harder time balling up. Like, I'm pulling on it, it's not balling up. Okay? It has a harder time balling up. Now it can affect the action some, and again, this is why this isn't the primary way to do it. The primary way is with the correct hook. But this works. Okay? Now, normally I would have this pegged all the way down, and so the bead wouldn't necessarily be an issue because it's pegged in place. But something I like to do occasionally is give it a little bit of space between the weight. Okay, now when it's falling, it's going to fall, it's going to do its spin as normal, gets on the bottom, you know, it's going to work. It's going to be very similar to this, but the difference is we now have audio. I'm sure you can hear that. I hope you can. Hopefully the wind isn't too bad. So this distance here, that's going to be totally up to you how much you want it to move around. But that's the point of the bead, is to give it a little more audio in this situation. And of course, because it's tungsten, you want to protect your knot. But that's why I use the bobber stop and the bead. It's totally not necessary. It's just something I like to do. I like the bobber stop because I don't want this bullet sinker, you know, scooting away from me completely. Okay? So we do that. So that is, I guess, the third style of rigging. And you can do this with the tube hook too. That's fine. Okay? Again, tube hook is the preferred hook. So that's that. The last way is Carolina rig. Now, for those of you guys who do not know how to Carolina rig, basically all a Carolina rig is we're going to scoot this bobber stop up. Basically, what you do is you make yourself, right here, you would tie on a swivel, just a typical little barrel swivel, right? Not a snap swivel, but a barrel. So you tie that on right here, and that makes a big leader. You know, 18 inches, 15 inches, however far you want. And so that prevents prevents your weight from being able to go all the way down to the tube. Okay? It's going to stop at that barrel swivel. You wouldn't need to have this bobber stop there, but it'll stop at the barrel swivel. And then this gives you this much leader for this to kind of float around in the current, for you to add a couple little additions to it, like, you know, those foamy earplugs. Cut some small pieces of foam, jam those in the nose. Do that before you pinch it in place like this, otherwise it's not going to work. You also run the risk of littering, so, you know, be careful about what you're doing. But small pieces of foam in here will cause this to float up a little higher in the water. So Carolina rigged, this will float a little bit. I think that's that. Let me look at my notes real fast. That's it. Drop a comment below if you guys have any questions. If you are new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. It's right down there. Looks like me holding a fish. Could be right over here. Looks like me holding a fish. Give the video a thumbs up if you liked it, if you learned anything. And guys, with that said, get out of the water, be safe, and go stick some lips.